Hey gamers, this is Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Charlemagne, Master of Europe from Hollandspiele. Charlemagne, Master of Europe is a solitaire game that is basically the successor to and expansion on Agricola, Master of Britain, which is a game that is in my collection and that I enjoy. Like Agricola, Master of Britain, Charlemagne, Master of Europe asks you to survive a certain number of turns while hitting certain victory point thresholds. And you're also going to have to make a lot of choices in the game and take some risks that will be resolved with a D8. Additionally, however, there are other thresholds you need to meet. You need to make sure that your wealth is at a certain level on every turn in order to continue play. And you also have to maintain a certain level of military might throughout the game in order to complete your rise to power. So there's a lot to be thinking about every single turn right from the start. Also, by the end of turn 12, there's certain conditions you have to meet in addition to the VP threshold. So there are going to be Moors who appear on the map. There must be no Moors counters that are left on the map. You have to be the king of the Lombards. You have to get the Iron Crown. You have to become the Holy Roman Emperor. And you have to have 3 bridges and roads regions, which means that you also, in addition to conquering and dealing with enemies popping up all over the map and handling your diplomacy, you also need to invest in infrastructure. So on each turn of the game, you're going to have a number of different options to pursue for your turn. If you don't want to get into a fight, but you want to make your enemies go away, you can take a suppress action where you just kind of make people go away without actually having a battle. However, you're not guaranteed of success, and as we're going to discuss in a moment, you can provoke a hostile reaction from the people you're trying to suppress. You can have a straight up battle. You can do a forced march that just lets you move around the map. You can give gifts to try to buy people off. You can lay siege to strongholds on the map. You can place a marquee and have them do weaker versions of your actions for you. And because you're on the path to being the Holy Roman Emperor, you can forcibly convert pagans in pagan areas of the map. But let it be known that that does not make people very happy. And really, this is a game in which you don't make anyone happy ever. The primary way that the enemy operates against you in this game is through cup adjustments. So these are shallow. You should probably have deeper cups to play for real, but I might have gotten in trouble for using all the mugs in the house. But there's a hostile cup, an unfriendly cup, and a friendly cup. And basically every time you do something on the map, no matter what it is, the odds are you're going to make somebody mad, which means you're going to be moving things from friendly to unfriendly, from unfriendly to hostile. And then when you have hostile reactions, you're drawing units from here and having to put them out on the map to fight with later. There are also 2 at the beginning and then more later turn-end chits that are put into the hostile cup, and when you draw your second one, your big campaign turn where you can take all of your actions is over. So you also have these turns that can be really big depending on what you draw, but you never really know when they're going to end, and you can also have your best laid plans destroyed because your turn ends earlier than expected. So all that movement among these cups mimics the anger that you cause by taking actions to aggrandize yourself. And these actions have direct consequences in terms of when turns might end, but also how other aspects of the game resolve. In addition to controlling everything on the board, you also have to actively gain victory points, and you can do that by having high-level battle units. You can do it by having regions that are free of enemy units, but in many cases, good luck with that. You can deal with intrigue markers because you also have intrigues against you as well as straight up fights. You get points for reaching various milestones in Charlemagne's life, so becoming a king of the Lombards gives you victory points each turn from there on out. Same for becoming Holy Roman Emperor, so you don't want to let those things sit for too long. You get points for marquees that you have, for churches that you build, and also for having a lot of money, but again, good luck with that because you need to spend your money to get more troops. So basically, Charlemagne, Master of Europe is this really intense balancing act where you're trying to balance your short-term interests and putting out fires all over the board, making sure you're going to have enough victory points to make it to the next turn, getting emergency victory points through English support, making sure that your treasury and taxation numbers are under control. You're going to have to handle all of that and balance it with your long-term goals of making sure that you hit the life milestones that you need to hit as Charlemagne. And you also need to be maintaining your military because you need it to fight, and you also need it to be meeting those military thresholds and for the victory points that high-level units can give. Battles are also quite interesting because you'll have these different levels of units. You'll have infantry and you'll have Skara. And You'll have to be leveraging your more powerful and high-level troops while also making sure they don't die. You're also going to have options about which units in your military you want to promote from turn to turn. So if you want to touch greatness the way that Charlemagne did, but you also want to be intensely stressed out by everything that needs to get done in order to do that, then Charlemagne Master of Europe is definitely the game for you. It's very difficult to win, but it's a lot of fun to play, and it's a pretty cheeky game. If you read the rulebook, it'll tell you that it's just your tough luck if something bad should happen. So now for some final thoughts. I can tell you that I already like Charlemagne Master of Europe. It is basically a more involved, more sprawling version of Agricola Master of Britain, which I've already reviewed for the Dice Tower. Charlemagne Master of Europe offers a very interesting puzzle where you are essentially trying to put out fires in the short term while also balancing and working towards your long-term interests. And it's that tension that makes the game really interesting and exciting. Victory in this game is never a given, and you're going to have to make a lot of smart decisions at every turn in order to keep your military the size it needs to be and to keep meeting that victory point threshold time and time again. It's that puzzly aspect that makes this game so satisfying. And if you want to spend time really figuring a game out and unlocking its possibilities, then I think that Charlemagne at Master of Europe is going to be something that you find exciting. The various actions available in this game are also fascinating. I love that you can focus on things like infrastructure, that you can place a marquee who can take some actions for you, even though they're not as good as your actions. There are a number of things that you can do other than outright having a battle. And in some cases, a battle, especially with a minor enemy, is not actually worth it. So this game really pushes you to do things other than just try to strong arm your way through. And I actually think that's great. The other aspect of Charlemagne Master of Europe that I adore is the cup mechanic. There's just no other game that plays like this. I'm just fascinated by the fact that in this game, everything that you do provokes some kind of reaction, usually a negative one from the enemy. And all that moving of chits from cup to cup, you don't necessarily know what you've moved, what you've pulled. That aspect of the game really creates an element of uncertainty and kind of a push against you that I really think does mirror history and its complexities. In terms of capturing how difficult Charlemagne's job must have been and all of the different interests that he had to hold in balance as he progressed through his career, this game is just a really interesting experience that I think if you're a history buff, if you want to know what trying to be a great ruler feels like, the stress that comes with that, I think this is your game. That said, this game does have its imperfections, often as a result of the same mechanisms that I really like. The first issue is again with the cup mechanism. Although the cups add this element of randomness and mystery and challenge to the game, they can also cause a little bit of imbalance, both in terms of game difficulty, because sometimes you just have terrible draws and that's just your luck, but also in terms of pacing, because in some turns, everything seems to be happening at once and it's just really intense. In other turns, you're not in a situation where there's a big battle to fight, and as I mentioned, fighting small battles is not necessarily efficient. So sometimes it feels like you're just waiting for the next thing to happen, and you have turns where it's like you have all this time on your hands to do stuff, but you're not really sure what because the state of the map hasn't developed to a point where you have a sense of direction. So there can definitely be some pacing issues in the game. That doesn't really bother me, it just kind of adds to the game's story. But I do think that it is an imperfection that needs to be addressed. That's especially true because die rolls in this game are very non-mitigable. You have to really stick with what you rolled, for better or for worse. So if you're drawing badly and rolling badly, get ready for some frustration. I mean, it's just how it is, but it can be very frustrating to have made it 10 rounds and then get shut down when you thought that things were going your way and you were going to make it to turn 12. So get ready for that sort of heartbreak. The other aspect of Charlemagne Master of Europe that I think is maybe not the best, although the game is still fun and I still am going to play it, I've played it several times, I can play it several more, is that because you're going through the career of Charlemagne, what that means is that you need to hit certain story beats at certain times throughout the game. So you're always going to go for the Iron Crown. You're always going to be thinking about becoming Holy Roman Emperor. And in some ways it makes the game play out the same, even if you do different things, even if the pacing is different, you're still playing out the same narrative. And so if that's something that's going to bother you, then it's also something to be aware of if you're thinking about this one. But overall, historically and mechanically, this game is such an interesting play, especially for a solo player. It runs very well as a solo game. The game manages to do a lot to you without a whole lot of upkeep, and I really dig it. So it's not perfect, but it's good, and it's fascinating. So for that, I give it an 8 out of 10 and a Dice Tower seal of approval. Happy gaming.